Good day, Will. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Rylan. How are you?
I'm swell, thank you. Super pumped to have you on here. So I got to do your podcast just last or a couple of weeks ago, and so I now get to interview you. So this is going to be a really fun thing. But let's dive into your story because we dive right into the podcast episode, and I always like the individual to tell people who they are and kind of what they do. So why don't you tell that part of your story? Who are you, and how you got to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, let's go through it. So I am Will, and I'm the host of the Willpower podcast. Um, on top of that, I'm working on building software that helps people. One of my goals right now is to turn the phone from a suck into a tool. So the way I think about 95% of the population who has a smartphone is kind of a slave to it. Like we've lost our autonomy and we just kind of take whatever the phone gives us, and that's the way we live our lives. So my goal is to build apps that change that and flip the relationship around where we again become kind of the owners of our own story and are able to have this like amazing technology and actually let it be a tool for us. Um, so I build apps. I am a podcast host, as I mentioned, and then I'm also training for an ultramarathon right now. I try to just stay physically fit, and whatever that is, like it's not always one thing. It's not like I'm an ultramarathon runner. I just thought this would be a cool challenge. In the past, I've trained jujitsu. I've been a weightlifter, done things like that. But yeah, for right now, it's ultra running.
I love that. And I didn't even realize that you just kind of got into ultra marathon as a challenge. I think that's so cool. I want to back up just a little bit. Let's kind of dive into this idea of evolution of you wanting to start the podcast, you getting I love the willpower. That's a great play on words. So that's awesome. Tell us what like inspired that. Like what makes you, hey, I want to start a podcast about willpower. What spoke to you on that?
Yeah, that's a long story. So let's get into that. Um, so the aspect of willpower is just something that's definitely been kind of a component of my life for like the past 5 years. I'd say ever since I went to college, I started kind of thinking more about like how can I live a more intentional life and actually like do the things that I want to do and not be owned by like fleeting emotions and whatever my emotional state is for the day. I don't want that to change my actions. And that's not to say to ignore emotions. I truly believe that emotions are there for a reason, but it's just that they don't need to be in control. So that's just been like something that's been in the background of my life for a while. And kind of on that note about like letting emotions control me, about 3-ish years ago, I made the decision that I was going to confront my fear of rejection as it came to dating women. Um, so that started with basically at that time, I was terrified of the idea of like going up to a woman who I didn't know and just like being like, hey, I think you're pretty, and like continuing from there, or I think you're cute, and like that idea of like expressing interest and potentially being shot down was so terrifying to me that I always had to be either using alcohol to get to the point where I could do that, or using dating apps. Because with dating apps, they kind of shelter you from rejection because you can swipe on people and they don't really know that you swiped on them unless they swipe. So it's like it shields you. So I finally made that decision. Like, I'm going to confront this fear. I'm going to work on this thing. And again, like, speaking of that emotional thing, it's like in the moment, I would be terrified. I'd be so nervous to go and talk to like a girl that I see at the dog park or out walking about or whatever it is. But I just learned to get over that. And I learned to kind of work through that and allow that nervous energy to just be there, but still go and do that thing. And through that process, I met my friend Tim, and we actually ended up starting a podcast kind of on this topic, and we called it the art of approach. Tim was a dating coach, and so he had like a business around it, and I would help him out with that, and host like a weekly thing where I would help other guys confront the same fear. So that's how I got into the first, like, the thought of podcasting, because I had never been a thing for me. It had never been like a thought like, oh, I could just start a podcast. And then doing that with Tim, I realized how much fun I had, and I really enjoyed it. And I would love when we would have guests on, but it got to a point where I felt limited in the guests that we could have on, because everyone we had as a guest had to somehow, like, we had to fit it into this dating context. And so that was where I started to kind of have my own wheels spinning, and I realized I could do this on my own. Like, this has been awesome to do with Tim, but I could totally just like start my own and do it exactly on what I want to talk about. And so dating was like kind of the application of willpower at this point in my life, but willpower is more of like the overarching theme. And so that's how I got the Willpower podcast.
That's super cool. The real thing that spoke to me was having the willpower to go talk to girls like that. It was very meaningful to me when I grew up. I had an era in my life where I was less shy. I would speak to girls, got shut down so many times, got really shy again. And then, it was really easy for myself to fall into the friend zone because wouldn't make a move. Then stepped out of my shell again, more success. And then after that, went back in the shell. And what's super important is that you mentioned something about nervous energy. And so this would speak a lot to to guys and probably even girls as well. But like nervous energy in the dating context is very real. This emotional wall and pull can just paralyze you. I still remember it so plainly to this day. And I wasn't that young. I was probably late 20s at this point. I was with friends and with alcohol. Yet still, when I went to go, I saw some girls that we could have approached. And this emotional compulsion told me to just walk past it safer. And it's just a fake emotional wall, right? There's some sort of a comfort that you're seeking out. You want someone else to go to the intro. You're more comfortable walking over to across the side of the room when really you could just say hi and find out. But our emotions, that is such a great description. The emotions are driving. And as you mentioned, it's not that you don't want emotions. Emotions are signals. They're informing you about your environment. But when you allow that signal to drive you away from a potential connection, meeting someone, well, that can really prevent you from meeting someone great, especially in the dating world. That can prevent you from doing something in your life. Public speaking is a prime example. I have very little issue with public speaking. So this is my one gift compared to most people, because most people rate public speaking higher on their fear list than death itself. So again, we're just really talking about something that is an emotional, nervous energy that can drive us. And so for us to actually just practice it, and as you mentioned, just practice that approach, practice being comfortable and being okay with it. I tell boxers all the time, when they get nervous before an event, it's like it's supposed to be there. This is a Mike Tyson quote. Any guy who says he's not nervous before a fight is either lying or crazy. And most people just will lie if they're not nervous, or you've done it 1,000 times, right? So it's great that that's what opened up the doors and you started to realize this amazing potential for having more fun conversations. And I'm really curious about what that venture has been like. You hosted, I noticed from my own experience of hosting this show, you get to interview so many cool people, right? So how many episodes have you had so far? And tell us some of the biggest lessons and takeaways that you've had from it.
Yeah, so I think actually, so your episode comes out this Wednesday. As of recording, it comes out tomorrow.
Awesome.
And that will be number 70. So we've gone, over a year of regular posting. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of really cool lessons, because in the beginning, I would primarily interview people I knew because it was just like, okay, I have like a bunch of friends who are doing cool stuff, and that's a good place to start. So I got to like have these like long conversations with people who I knew, but I had never had this kind of interaction with them before. I'd never had this kind of like sit down 1-2 hour conversation. So that was a really cool experience to just get to see people in a different way and see kind of meet them on a different level than we were used to. Um, from there, it became, I ran out of friends. I was like, okay, I've talked to everyone, so I have to find new people. And I think an early one that was really cool for me, this was like episode 20-ish. I was kind of just taking shots. Like I was like, who do I really want to have on? And just like whatever the name was, I was like, I'm just going to ask them. Like if there's any way I can contact them online, I'm just going to ask. And so Robert Glover was one who I asked. He's the author of No More Mr. Nice Guy, which is this like huge book in men's self-development, dating, healing, all of that. And I found his email on his website. I just said, hey, I have this podcast. I would love to have you on. And then the next day he responds, sure, where's your scheduling link? And so this like, I never thought I would be able to have him on, especially that early on. It just didn't feel like, okay, this podcast isn't big enough yet. And I was able to. And so I learned that from that stage that like I could meet really cool people through this podcast. And a lot of people are just interested in doing a podcast. It's not necessarily what they get out of it, but just the fact that they get to have an awesome conversation and connect with someone in this way that isn't super normal or typical in today's world. So I think those were some of my biggest takeaways, was like I could just finding out that I can meet people this way and lead them through this conversation in a really cool way.
That is super cool that you just took that leap. It inspires me to start approaching more people. I luckily have enough people in my community. Fitness community is quite broad, and so I can actually connect. I had a similar idea though, connect with people that that you can have conversations. And like you mentioned, when you get to interview a friend, it's a whole different conversation. You've never interviewed a friend, right? Mm-hmm. And then I got to, even on my 100th episode, I interviewed my dad, because when it came to ambition, he was always my inspiration, and got to know him even better. And it was a really good heart-to-heart chat, and got to know him on a great depth with some whiskey. So it loosened them up a little bit. But as you mentioned, to be able to connect in that space, I could see it being pretty hard, but to have the courage to say, hey, just start asking people. So I'm probably going to do the same and start approaching more people. I was curious from some of the lessons or interviews, because I noticed this with some of the people who I didn't know before and I got to interview on here. I find like I'm always surprised how much I can learn from the individual, and just some interesting lessons and takes. And it's changed the way I become a nutrition or training coach. It's changed my perception, and I reference these episodes for my clients. So I've been like, hey, check out this episode. This person knows what they're talking about. This person has great insight on this. So do you have some highlights that come to mind as far as some of the episodes that were kind of like, man, I think I learned something from that very episode?
Yeah. There was one around maybe 35 or so, but it's funny that at 35, I felt like I was like way into the podcast, but now I'm realizing that was like halfway to where I am now. Mm-hmm. But his name's Kenneth Whitaker. And we just had like, that was one of the most like, he was very in touch with his emotions, and he had just gone through a challenging divorce the past 2 years before. And yeah, man, I've never been in a conversation where like, I've never seen a man be able to like cry and then pull it back together immediately and just like go through the waves of his emotions very, like cleanly. I don't know any other word for it, but he was able to just tear up, but then also come right back and just express his emotions in a unique way that I'm not used to, and I haven't seen very much. So I feel like learning from like that taught me a lot about how I can show up and how I can allow, like I talked about, emotions are there. There's no point in denying them. So recognizing that I can show up in that same way, not in the same way as him, but in a unique way where I allow emotions to come up when they do.
That's such an interesting concept, and I totally respect and value that, because we can get into this idea of stoicism and controlling emotions to almost be too hard-headed or just too traditional masculinity of, I can't show any tears, right? I can't show my emotions too much. And I'll say I fall into that camp of believing that if I show too much emotion, people see me cry, I can't lead, I can't be who I want to be. And I do believe that you want to feel your emotions. And you know what's interesting? So this really takes me to when I had a rough time in my life where a friend passed away. He had taken his own life. And to me, it was so important that I held myself together because I wanted to be there for his family, who's, you know, his brother's one of my best friends. I was very close to their family. They're like a second family to me. And I never wanted someone to see me cry to make it about me, because it wasn't about me. That was my justification anyways. And at the end of the whole really tough week we had, I remember my friend who passed away, his brother-in-law, had said to me, "Man, I didn't see you shed a tear." And that hit me. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like someone that cares enough. And even more recently, I was at my mama's funeral. And it was the first time I recognized what crying really does for an individual. It doesn't just allow emotions out, it doesn't just allow you to feel the sadness. There is actually, to me, like a biological evolutionary stance of showing other people that you care about someone and something. To actually, like, I saw someone across the room at my mama's funeral, didn't know the person, saw them cry, and I was like, she cared about my mama. That's why crying matters still. But what you had mentioned that I really admire and I value this individual that you're interviewing, to go through showcasing that, hey, I'm going to cry because this is hard. And then to be able to pull back and say, I can still hold my thoughts and control that emotion because I no longer need it in this very instant. And I think, to me, I've been so afraid of not having control once you let it out. You know, so that's been always a huge fear of myself. So I think it's a really interesting thing. Do you feel like you've been able to bring in emotion and practice bringing into emotion into your life more routinely?
Yeah, I think that came up when I recently, like 6 months ago, went through a breakup. And yeah, it's funny to compare the breakup I went through before that, which was about like 4 years ago now, where I did cry during that breakup, but it was like it forced its way out of me. I was doing everything I could to not cry because I was in that same mentality that was like, I need to just, like, men don't cry. I need to just like keep living my life and repress that. And I also didn't share it with anybody. Like, when I went through that previous breakup, I told my roommate at the time and I told my mom, and those were the only two people I really like shared it with. Other people just heard about it from, around. This breakup, I found that I could see the amount of emotional growth I've gone through because I actually was able to share it with a number of close friends, and there were friends who I was able to tear up and share that emotion with, but then also come out of it. And then we're laughing and having a fun time, even though I was just crying. And that seemed crazy to me. That wouldn't seem possible a couple of years ago that I could do that. So yeah, I've definitely been able, I think it also comes down to shame. The thought is oh, if I cry, then there's something wrong with me and I'm going to be ashamed of that. And then I can't come back from that. And I'm just I'm just the guy who cried. So moving past that and being able to just like, okay, in that moment I was sad and I expressed that sadness. And now in this moment, I'm not no longer sad. And so there's that moment has passed. That emotion has moved through me.
That's a really big thing. And I will say that it's so interesting that I don't see myself as the traditional masculine guy 100%, but this one thing, I have a hard time letting go of it. So like I totally know what you mean, where it's like to be able to allow yourself, let yourself feel that emotion, and almost because I think I do link it to weakness. And it reminds me of when I was a young kid, because I cried a lot when I was a young kid. But then as soon as I was an adult, I learned how to, as you say, repress the emotion.
Yep. Yep.
And you get good at it. You get really good at it. It's like, oh no, I know it's like its own willpower muscle of just, no, I'm going to choke that down. And I mean, on the topic of willpower, I mean, that's what we always are trying to do when we're pushing ourselves to do extremes. Like, we're going to get into your marathon running. Like, fuck, you need to push down emotion. I want to quit. No, I can't. It's like, that is a skill when you're doing certain things. And so there's this kind of, ebb and flow that we need to have with our emotions. When do we listen to them? When do we not? When do we allow it to run through us? When we just say, and sometimes the emotions are just dead wrong, right? So I think that's really cool that you've gone through that transformation, that you've been able to understand how to appreciate and let in emotion. But let's flip to the willpower side. I want to start with this in turn, because you asked me this question. So I want to ask you your question. What are 2 words that come to mind when it has to do with willpower?
I think definitely discipline is one of them. And then the other, the one that's coming to me is just wisdom.
Okay.
Enough, which I don't think usually would be associated with willpower, but yeah, I can explain why I picked those 2.
Let's dive into each of them. We'll start with the one that does inherently sound obvious, discipline.
Right.
So why does that come to mind?
So for me, discipline is just doing what you set out to do. That could be like, I'm going to wake up early every day this week. If you have discipline, you follow through with that. And there are times where like something comes up that changes things. But I think discipline is just, I set out to do this thing. I'm going to follow through with that thing to the best of my ability. And that's very important. Because again, emotions will tell us stories, and it's easy to get wrapped up in those stories and say like, okay, no, I'm tired this morning. I don't want to get up early. Having discipline is following through with what you told yourself you would do. And I think that's also like having some trust in yourself, making commitments to yourself, like standing up for like your own word and holding through to that.
I really like that. Holding to your word. Holding to your word is like a very simplistic, you're going to show up and do the things I said I was going to. I love the Mike Tyson quote. I think he said it on Joe Rogan's podcast. It was, discipline is doing the thing you really don't want to do, but acting like you love it. And I just love that. That had gravity to me, because it's the act like you love it. It's like, it doesn't matter how you feel about it, but act like you love it. And that act is just going through the motion with intention, even if underneath it's hard. Like, that is discipline. If you think of someone who's disciplined, it's like, man, you're showing up every day, you're doing this. And do you love this stuff? Nope. I just do it. And that to me does really speak true to a disciplined character. And as you mentioned, like owning your word. I said I was going to do this. And so to keep to your word, and that's a great thing for people to appreciate, that it's, if you're having a hard time with confidence in yourself and confidence in what you can do and what you can achieve, like discipline is going to be the only way to achieve it in any avenue, because you get confidence by showing up and saying, I'm going to do this thing. Hey, I did it. I can say what I'm going to set out to do. But if you say I'm going to do this thing and you don't follow through with the thing, that would make sense why you don't feel confident in your own word.
Right.
So I think it's such a great source for people to appreciate more confidence. Now let's dive into the second word. I liked it a lot, but I'm curious how you're going to dive into wisdom.
Yeah. So wisdom, I feel like there's a lot here. Um, there was this book I really like that came out last year, How to Think Like Socrates. And it's by this guy, oh, what's his name? Donald Robertson, something like that. Robert Donaldson, something like one of the two combinations. And he kind of like has to create this character of Socrates because there's not a lot of uh, historical information on Socrates. He was very like, it was like Plato talked about him as his teacher in some of Plato's works, but Socrates himself didn't really have anything that he like wrote. And so he's more of just like an idea of a person. And so the author puts together these like kind of debates that he would have just in the style of Socrates. And so it's not historically accurate, but it's just getting at the idea. And one of those debates that really stuck with me, he like is arguing with this guy in front of this whole court of people and he's defending himself. And he makes this point that wisdom and virtue are the same thing because virtue, so his example was someone going into war. He could either be brave and fight for his country, his empire, or he could be a coward and he could run. And Socrates, his point there was, if being a coward was best for the person, then it would be wise of him to do that. It would be virtuous. But the fact is that that's not better. Like being a coward is not going to be better for you. Likely in that case. Of course, if you just go get killed, like there's an argument to be made there. But this idea of like your character, who do you become when you become a coward? And so his whole point there was that we do the right things because they're good for us. We do the virtuous things because they are actually good. There's a reason for it. And the understanding of that goodness and the reason why we do things is wisdom. And so his attachment there was wisdom and virtue are actually the same thing. So basically to get all of these virtues of bravery, honesty, integrity, they can all be summed up into wisdom. Because again, like, why would you be honest? If there was no reason to be honest, that would make no point. Like there would be no point in being honest. But there is a point, there is a reason, and you learn that reason with time and understanding of what that means and why you want to stay true to your word and how honesty brings trust of other people, it brings trust in yourself, all these things, but that comes with wisdom. So I think wisdom is the other one I picked because I don't want to ever just blindly do things because someone online does them and they look cool, or because it seems like something that a good person would do. I want to do them because there's a reason behind it. And my hope is to build the wisdom to do the right things.
That's a really cool sentiment and a great way to think about it. The virtue of wisdom, the idea that, just the faith in willpower itself, essentially, is the way I kind of interpret that. As you mentioned, the will, right? It's just, hey, we got to get the discipline and the power to know that it works. And to know that when you continue to show up for yourself, to have the virtue of belief within yourself and to do it again and again and again, that's a great flip on it. I wouldn't imagine someone using the term wisdom, which I really love the uniqueness of that. And it almost, in some sense, you could say it gives you more gravity to it and pulls you towards you're on the right path. It's not just showing up and being resilient and doing the discipline. It's like also reminding yourself this is the wise thing to do, is to use this willpower use the belief in yourself to show up with discipline, because you know it is going to serve you in the long run. So it gives you the ability to feel like the wise thing to do here is to use this power. I think that's a real beautiful statement. I don't think we got a chance to discuss it on your podcast, but it made me think deep about that. Like I thought about resiliency, I believe is one of the words I gave you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because I think willpower is about resiliency, resisting emotions and resisting the instincts of doing other things, right? And then I actually believe I said desire or passion. And that was, yeah. And it was because that was inspired by my father. Like, he's the guy who's like the best work ethic I'd seen firsthand. And it was his passion for what he was doing. Like, I mean, the power for the will was just like, I'm going to be a farmer. I'm going to get the work done. It's a way that I think people can think about what willpower should be really fueled by, right? In some sense, your wisdom is a part of it. I also think it's very integral for people to have a heavy amount of motivation for whatever the intention is. And so, like, if we're going to talk about fitness and nutrition, which a lot of my listeners would, it's like, make sure you're really fueling that power with something you're passionate about. Like, in that, you can say health, but health isn't enough. It has to be health for your family so you live longer. It has to be health for your loved ones so you can care for them more. And I still feel like I like how yours fits into that too, is to be wise enough to know that that's the right choice, you know? And I think so many people wait when it comes to health and fitness to make the right moves. And you just got to be wise enough to know, hey, I've waited too long. I got to keep pushing. So I think that's really helpful for people to utilize those kind of strategies. Within this venture on willpower and interviewing these people, have you come across some great strategies for people to foster willpower and, you know, tactics they can use to help utilize willpower to improve their lives?
Yeah, one I like to share came from Erin Lavaroni is her name. She is a habit coach. Like, so she basically coaches on how to like help their clients follow through outside of sessions. So I'm sure this is something that's comes up in your world all the time, which is like, you train someone once a week, but then the rest of the week they eat like shit and they don't work out. And so it's really hard to like get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So she is more around like her work focuses not on like the specific what, but like the how. Like, how do you actually follow through with things? And one of the really good techniques that she offered when she came on was this, like, if I mess up, what do I do? Like, making this plan ahead of time. And she had a nice name for it that I don't remember. But basically when we make a fitness plan, we kind of tend to just like show the happy path, right? It's like, everything goes right. I'm going to eat these exact things every day. I'm going to train these days. And it's the happy path. It's like, this is if everything goes perfectly. And so her guidance was like, make a plan for when something breaks, when something doesn't go according to plan. And so I think that's super powerful. That was something I did with the podcast, because for me, I get really like compulsive about certain things. So with the podcast, it's like, it has to come out every single Wednesday. Like, Wednesday is the day it comes out. If I miss a Wednesday, like, that's bad. And so I recognized that early on. I was like, if I miss a Wednesday, that could like throw me for a loop. And I want to make sure that if I do, for whatever reason, miss a day, I still continue on the path. And so that was it. It was just like, if I ever miss a Wednesday, post the episode as soon as I can. And the next week, go back to Wednesday posting. So it's like creating a plan for failure. If I eat the wrong thing on my diet, and this is something we talked about on my podcast, is like this fuck it mentality when you mess up on your diet and then you just spiral out and eat like crazy. So having a plan in place. If I eat something that's, not in line with my goals, the next step is just recognize it and to just cut it there. Just like stop and reevaluate, rather than if you only have the happy path, there's no other, you don't know what happens. There's no guidance. There's no rules. As soon as you step off the happy path, it's just the wilderness, and there's no other structure to follow.
It's a great way to put it. It's like you need the structure for the fall. You need it's the plan B, plan C. It's just this idea that people have this perfection mentality, the happy path. And if you veer off it, just like we talked about the fuck it's like, oh man, I messed up. And people have this analogy in nutrition, and I don't love it, but I understand where it's coming from. They say, oh, it's like when you get a flat tire and then you think, okay, I'm going to slash all 3 tires. And I don't really love that analogy, because when someone messes up in nutrition, they don't like the act of like the flat tire and then going to slash the other 3 tires. I don't love that analogy. I think it's more like if you had a flat tire for being on a rough road and then you continue to drive down that road and it pops the other 3 tires. I don't think you're slashing the tires. You just keep driving the wrong direction. And so,
or you don't take care of that flat tire. You just let it run on the rim.
Run on the rim. And it's like, at that point, it's like, don't drive down this road that probably has a fucking ton of nails on it, right? That analogy speaks a bit more true than grabbing slashing it. I don't think people are like, well, fuck it, I'm going to shove all this food down my mouth. No, it's similar to that emotional state that people go into, because when they're on the happy path, they have an emotional state of comfort and like, hey, I'm structured, and they veer off that happy path. And you can almost imagine it's like walking a bit of a tightrope, or like you're on a really steep hill and you got to walk right on this steep hill, and you're at the top of the hill, and if you start sliding and then you just roll down it, it's like, no, we actually got to teach you how to slide that hill and then to step back up on the path that you want, and they're just as good. And so when someone is, say, back to the analogy of the car, someone drives off that path, it's like, oh, we popped the tire. Okay, well, don't continue to go down this road that just popped the tire. It's like, let's slowly steer back. And that's the other big thing, is like, it doesn't have to be perfect. As you mentioned, it's always all over the place. I totally love the idea of plan to fail, like plan for the failure, plan for whatever that problem is. Whenever I talk to people about like, okay, what are you hoping to do this week? What's the main focus? Okay, what is the challenge? What's gonna steer you wrong? Don't just say, I'm going to eat healthy this week. Okay, not specific enough. Okay, I'm going to try to control my calories. Perfect. We're a little bit more accurate. Okay, you can control. What are you going to do? I'm going to calorie track. Okay, perfect. What is the challenge? What is the specific action? I like to be very specific with people that you need to probably overcome. And some people might say, I need to physically open my phone and remember to track. Perfect. We have an action step that we can remind ourselves to do. Someone else might be like, well, I got this dinner coming up. And it's like, okay, perfect. Let's plan on the very situation, visualize that situation that you're going to have to prepare for emotionally. So this way, when you get there, it's like, yeah, I hope I eat healthy. It's like, no, what is the emotional state you're going to have to mentally prepare for? And it's like, hey, if you do eat too much, then what? You just ate too much. You can just kind of leave it there, right? And that's for sure easier said than done, but it's important for people to think about when they're trying to make progressions, is like, understand like the unhappy path, the veering off. This is where all the growth happens, but to have those plans in place for how to get you back on and to prevent the fuck it's to prevent the tumble down the hill, right? I think that's great information. I think that's really good, wise description. Now, I would love to flip a bit into the willpower you have to do this fucking ultra marathon, because I'm super curious about that. How long have you been doing the training for it, and tell us how it's been so far?
Yeah, I have my training plan. I think this is week 13 out of 21 total. So I'm deep into it. I'm like getting to a point. I think the next 4 weeks are my the 4 weeks of just continuing to increase volume, and then the last 3 to 4 weeks are going to be just like
decrease,
down, tapering.
Yeah.
Yeah, the decision to actually do it was pretty impulsive. It was like I kind of knew that I wanted to do one at some point in my life. It was just like in the back of my mind, like this would be a really good challenge, like a really good, like just something to like make me face myself and face something really difficult. And then one day I was just thinking about it in the car, and then I get home and I start just looking at them online, and I found one that kind of made sense. And so I just signed up, like not too much thought into like what this actually entails. And I do actually also another willpower thing. I do like this like pre-commitment idea of like kind of forcing yourself to commit to things early on. So like with this race, I signed up and I paid for it. And basically it's like, it goes from this thing that's abstract, this idea that's like, oh, I want to do this thing, kind of like you were talking about, but it's not specific. It's not like I'm actually, it's just a desire. Oh, I want to do this at some point. What I did is I made that, okay, you're doing it on December 6th. This is going to happen now because you just signed up and you paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
Another technique I've used in the past, similar, is sending money to friends when you're struggling to follow through with something. So for me, this was fasting. I was doing these like 3-day fasts, and 1 month I just like was struggling. Like I would do a day and then I would break the fast early. I would do a day, I'd break the fast. And I was like, I'm never going to get through this. So I started again and I sent my friend $500 and I said, don't send me this until I finish, like, unless I finish the fast on Friday. If I eat before Friday, that's money that's yours. So if you can build those into your life as well, that's one way to kind of jumpstart that discipline. But to come back to the ultra, yeah, man, I signed up, and then it became like a really serious thing. I remember the first week, it was like peak summer in Austin, Texas, and my alarm went off at like 6 a.m. because I had to run so early because it's so hot out, and I did not want to get up. I was just not in the routine of waking up early. Like I hadn't been doing that, hadn't been working out early in the day. I was more of an afternoon person. And I did not want to get up. And then I remembered I have to run 100 miles in 20 weeks. And if I don't run this morning, that, like, this is a bad start. If I start out by not running this morning, that's going to be a hard 100 miles. And so that became my motivation, was just remembering every run I was doing was basically nothing. Like it paled in comparison to the 100 miles. And also, if I don't do these runs, that 100 miles, like I literally won't be able to do it. Like physically, my body probably won't be able to make it 100 miles if I don't do these runs. So that was a huge motivator for me, knowing that that was coming. More on the practical side, just having a specific training plan, like you said. Like I have my table here. It's got every single day has a run. Like it just has a number on it, how many miles. And I just follow it. And I've done it every single day. Done the number of miles on there. So definitely for me, having a specific training plan is like huge motivator.
Yeah, it gives you that checklist. It's like I got to do this. Like this is clearly what it requires, and it gives you that step by step, like you say, the plan ideally that we get to follow, and it makes it like a bit more comforting because then you're not hesitant to do it. I talked to so many people that I work with before working with them. They're like, I'm really motivated to go to the gym because I don't know what to do. It's like, yeah, that's what trainers are going to offer you. You don't have to hesitate to go and do the work because you know the work is actually going to get you very likely to your destination. And just come back on that, the timer, or sorry, the bet essentially you did with your friends. Like, I got to bet this out. It reminds me of something one of my coaches had told us with $100 timer. And you basically give yourself a certain amount of time, and you, same thing, you tell a friend, if I can't get this task done, and it's just like, it's a way to like speed motivate yourself through tasks so you don't mess around. If this isn't done in 24 hours, I'm going to send you $100. And another little tip that people can use if they're trying to fast track and deadline themselves, because we know when we're in school and you're going to get an F if you don't get it in time. We fucking cram. We put the shit on the line to get things done. And when you're not in school and you don't have the same deadlines, it's a lot more difficult to like motivate yourself to be like, hey, I got to get this done, get it this time, but like kinda. So it's really smart to create that external, motivation essentially that you need to drive yourself. Now, when you're doing, I two more questions on the running. One, do you have a strength and nutrition plan to go along with it so that you're feeling well prepped for this?
Yeah, that's definitely one piece I haven't put as much attention into. And if I were to do this again, if I do this again, I think that would be a component to add on. For nutrition, I'm trying to, like, I try and eat more when I have long runs. When I'm more sore, I try to eat more so that my body has more resources. But other than that, it's been, it's not very specific. I eat pretty clean in general, so it's not like I'm eating bad food for the most part. And then for training, that's another piece that I think I would need I would need to do more research and have a more science-backed approach because early on, I kind of realized that I can't do my normal weight training with this running plan because similarly, like I went from 0 miles to like 40 miles a week at the beginning. And so I was just really sore. And I was like, if I add weightlifting onto this, I don't think I don't think my legs are going to recover in time. I need to like make sure that, again, all my body's resources need to be going to recovering my legs. So I did not do much weight training for the beginning. I just started adding in like 1 to 2 days a week. But I do think for success that it's important that you find, like with ultras, finding a way to fit in specifically load-bearing exercise. So like carrying heavy stuff, doing heavy squats. And the reason I say that is because it goes beyond just muscular endurance when you're running 100 miles. It comes down a lot to the tendons and the bones as well because there's so much impact. It's just repeated, like probably like 200,000 steps that are just hitting you in the knees, in the hips, in the ankles, like all that force just compounds. And those are the things that are really hard to build. Like if you think building muscle is hard, building tendon strength takes way longer, and building bone density, like that takes forever. So I think it's really, if I were to do it again, I would research more. How can I best fit in these like heavy lifting sessions with my training plan? Or maybe just focus on like, maybe I spend 3 months building up those things, the tendons and the bone strength, and then I spend the next 6 months training for the running part, something like that.
Yeah. And, a lot of people, it's a great point about tendons. It's a great point about like, the low bearing, and an ultra marathon isn't usually just flat. Like you got a lot of terrain and stuff that you can do. And most runners and athletes of other disciplines will always forget the best utility of strength training is not to be stronger. It is to not get injured, because nothing makes you able to do your sport better than your sport. So if you can't do your sport because you got hurt, then you can't train. Right. Even if you're not much stronger, right? Let's say you don't do much for really getting much stronger from strength training, but you don't get hurt, the net positive is so much more substantial than someone who's stronger and then gets hurt, right? And so this is the value piece that a lot of athletes don't think about. It's like, yeah, maybe being stronger would be good for, running or whatever, but I'm not really worried about it. It's like, do you want to run? Do you think there's a chance that you could hurt your joint, or, especially if you have other terrain, hurt your ankles or something like that? Strength training is going to be the thing that provides that. So I love that you're looking into it. I think that's a value piece that people need to appreciate. And then when it comes to nutrition, say you try to eat more and stuff like that, certain training days, have you tried tracking the calories? Sounds like you eat clean, but to actually get the caloric balance, will give you the best chance at the best amount of available energy.
Right. And that is something I did for like a week, and then I didn't set the habit in. Um, yeah, I think that would probably be better because like when you track calories, there's no like, oh, you can't fake it. You can't be like, oh yeah, I probably ate the right amount, because you actually see it. It's right there. You know exactly how much you ate. So yeah, I never was able to set it in. I still could, honestly. Like I could
Yeah.
just start right now.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd recommend you look into, like listen to obviously other ultra marathoners and people around nutrition who are more attuned to this. But a lot of people misconceive how to fuel up for an event. And it's like 2 days before your event, you start fueling up. And it's a lot of carbs. You still want some healthy fats, but it's a lot of carbs.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think it's like the day of. The only time the day of affects you is when you're on your long run and then you're refueling during your run. But a lot of the carbohydrates are in you the day before, 2 days before.
Right.
And so to actually, when you really do the math on understanding how many hours of running you're doing and how many carbs you need, you're going to be fucking blown away. You're like, holy shit, I've eaten how many calories? And, it's super funny when people try to get into running, not even like ultra marathon, but just like, let's say I'm going to do a half marathon or something like that, which by the way is a healthy event, or a full marathon, healthy-ish. Like, I mean, you're getting into the extremes, right? But it's not a great plan for weight loss because it requires so much extra fuel and balancing the fuel. You can't afford to be in a deficit. And so we get this misconception of, oh, well, these ultra marathoners or marathoners, like ultra marathons also have different body types of marathoners, but they're all lean, right? And it's like, well, you're just seeing the people probably on TV or on social media that are lean. Like when I actually went and did a full marathon, the body compositions were hilarious because the front was very lean people and about 60% or more were overweight people that could just handle long distance running. By the way, kicking my ass. Like these overweight people, I would call overweight visually, were way faster than me, but they had the efficiency of running, right? And so I just think it's kind of interesting where people have the misconception of how difficult nutrition is to still lose weight and to fuel that effectively. But I'm really excited to hear how. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say sometimes it also comes down to like how well your stomach is at just like absorbing nutrients. Like how fast can you
100%.
absorb? And overweight people, that could be a piece of it, is that their body is just very good at absorbing the nutrients quickly. One other piece is that like this isn't probably 100% the cause, but it's probably a factor, which is that when you see the lean people who are like super good marathon runners, they might not be lean because they're marathon runners. They might be marathon runners because they're lean. Like they have the body type that gave them like a much better chance of being a good marathon runner. And so then that's why they're at the top of the game.
I totally agree. They're just already light on their feet, and then they weren't interested in other things, and so they end up getting into marathon running. Like it's very common, and my brother's into marathon running. Guy hasn't tracked a calorie in his day, in his life. I maybe once, but rarely. And he still runs marathons. He's never actually gotten into nutrition. Still fuels. Still does good. And it's like some people don't have to try. And they can, and then they'll do their sport and they'll perform. And it's just like, it's what it is, right? Some people it comes more natural to. On the willpower topic and the ultra marathon topic, how do you push yourself mentally through these long fucking runs? What goes through your mind? What drives that willpower for you?
I think just like relaxing into it as much as possible. Like so my last long run was 27 miles. That was last Saturday.
So over a marathon.
Yes. That was my first run ever that I went over a marathon. And just like, if I'm like at mile 4 and I'm thinking about, oh, I still have 23 miles to go, that's going to be a hard run. Like the more I'm thinking about how much is left, the worse off I am. So I try and turn it into more of like a meditative, mindful practice where I'm just like following each step. I'm just feeling the steps. I'm trying to focus on my running form and just like relaxing into the moment and not thinking too much about how much I have left to go. Um, yeah, that for me honestly is because if you're not thinking about how much is left to go, you're not thinking about quitting, right? And so that like if your problem is like, oh, I have trouble because I start things and then I quit them. Like I go to the gym and then I leave early, whatever it looks like. Like if you can just get into the moment as much as possible and just really just do what you're doing. Like whatever's in front of you, just do that 100%. Don't think about what else is going on. Don't think about how much is left in the workout. It makes things a lot easier and way more enjoyable also because you're not just like gritting your teeth through everything and like, oh, I got fucking 20 miles left to go. You're just in the moment. You're just enjoying it.
That is great advice, to be present in the challenge. I had the same lesson when I did my first marathon where I was building up and it's like, okay, I got 10 miles today. I'm not thinking about that number. I'm going to think about mile one. How did I feel on mile two? How did I feel on mile three? Like just feel this mile right now. Feel these strides right now. And I love how you flipped it into the gym. I love how you flipped it into what people really worry about. I've heard this many times from people who aren't used to the gym, aren't used to pushing hard, where you get them to push hard in one of their sets. And I don't tell people they have to push hard in every set, but for sure, try to have a set you really try to nearly max out. And they'll be like, oh man, how do you have energy for the rest of the workouts? Great advice. Don't think about that. Have energy to start the next exercise. And you're almost just underestimating yourself, right? You're just underestimating because once you've done that for the first exercise, the second exercise, the third, and you're not thinking about if you can do the rest, you just always think of the present challenge, you end up doing it. Like it's spending too much time, almost like you're almost double torturing yourself, right? Mm-hmm. You're spending time in the idea of exhaustion, thinking of an emotional state in the future, which gives you more angst and exhaustion, and you're tired in the moment. And what you mentioned is like, can you even enjoy being present in the moment? Can you enjoy that, essence of challenge that you're trying to overcome? And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that part. Like so many people who don't really get into the habit of exercise routinely cannot become present with it to find curiosity and enjoyment in the moment of it. And that's imperative. Like, when people go to do running, like it speaks to them. Like your experiences right now, like in the moment, yes, it's tough, but you're having some feedback to speak to you, to sink into it. I thought that was the way you said it, sit into it and to try to enjoy, to be present. Whereas so many other people are trying to think of other things. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if, I imagine your own personal prep runs you can do without music, but I know some competitions like runs, you're not allowed to even have like headphones in or anything like that. Is that true?
I don't know. I feel like I've heard that for certain ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And it might be different for the ultra marathon. I just know competition level on certain marathons, you're not allowed to. Yeah. Which is like, to be fair, like my one marathon, my headphones didn't work really. But it honestly didn't even matter. Like when you are really in it, it sounds so bad, but it's like you have a lot going on in your mind. You can actually be pretty present out there. So I think that's great advice. Be present in the moment and you can learn a lot from it. Well, this has been a great chat. I think you gave some great advice around willpower. And I think I have a sense of it, but I'd love to hear from you because this is always the closing one is, what is your most recent ambition? Let's go aside from the ultra marathon. I'm curious if there's anything else that's really speaking to you right now.
Recent ambition? Yeah. Definitely this app that I've built and I'm now, making better and trying to get out to people. This has been crazy how motivated I've been. I went into tech like 4 years ago out of college and I could not figure out why I was not motivated to do tech work, to do my engineering. I really wanted to. I wanted to be a good worker and I wanted to be like a good employee and I wanted to be doing all this stuff and impressing people. And like I tried to set up like productivity systems and all this, and I just couldn't do it. And I felt bad about myself that I couldn't motivate myself. Um, and then I left my job like 2 months ago, and I'm like, I found out why I wasn't motivated because I didn't care. I was trying to motivate myself to do something that I did not care about. And it's been completely opposite ever since then. So this app has been awesome. Yeah, it feels really good to just get to build something myself and do it exactly how I want and know why I'm doing it. Yeah.
It's really cool. Tell us a little bit more about the app. You alluded to it. Can you describe it a little bit more for what? And is it already out, or are you working on getting it finished?
Yeah, so it's completely out on the App Store, Google Play. There's a web version as well. It's called Grooves.
Okay.
The website is mygrooves.app, or you can find it Grooves Daily Routine Tracker on if you're Android app or whatever. But it is what I call like a new way of habit tracking. So basically you track habits on it, but every day you also submit a subjective well-being quiz. So that keeps track of basically 6 different dimensions of well-being, those being energy, physical, like the way your body feels. If you feel sore, you feel good, you feel all that. Energy, mental clarity, mood, and stress. Over time, as you fill out the habits, as you log your habits, and as you log your well-being, my algorithm detects patterns within those two. And basically, it delivers you with insights around, okay, when you do this thing, you feel this way. When you run, you tend to actually have +2 energy the following day. When you meditate, you have more mental clarity the following week, things like that. So yeah, the goal is to kind of like with that wisdom thing is like understand what the habits are actually doing, rather than just doing mindless habits for the purpose of because we saw them on Instagram or whatever it is.
That's great. I love how you pulled the algorithm because, I mean, certainly you hear about habit tracking apps, but the idea that that habit tracking app is going to get to know you and going to help you see insight and things that you probably are unaware of. I think that's very intelligent. I think that's going to be really helpful and impactful for a lot of people. So congrats on making your app. I imagine that was a ton of work. We'll definitely put a link in the show notes for that. And why don't you let the listeners know more about where they can find about you and the podcast and everything else?
Yeah. WilliamMulvaney.com, or you can just look up the Willpower podcast on, wherever you consume your podcasts.
Perfect. Well, they're going to have to go check out your podcast because I'm on it this week.
Yeah,
right? So,
that's coming out tomorrow. So whenever this episode comes out, it'll already be.
Yeah, it'll already be out because this is coming out next week. So perfect. You guys got to go check out that podcast, me and Will, for another chat. So thank you so much, Will. I really appreciate being on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ben. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much to Will for that. I had a lot of fun with that, and it went into turns I didn't really expect, especially right off the bat when he said one of the biggest impacts he had was talking to someone about emotions. And that took me down a turn that I honestly am in a venture of my own to appreciate and understand what it is to feel that level of emotion. I'll just rant about it a little bit quicker here, as I already kind of told the story, but it is a big thing for me mentally that I don't like crying. I don't mind feeling the emotion underneath. And so that's where I'm at. Before I would always repress it. And now I'm like, okay, I feel it. I'm human. I'm not totally just pushing it aside. As I mentioned, when my friend passed away years ago, I held it back. And that actually really reinforced this habit of being able to not cry. Now, for me, it was about, for sure, being able to speak for him, to be able to do part of the eulogy at his funeral and to be able to speak through it and to say the words I wanted to out loud to get his message on. And it's not like I did it robotically without emotion. There was emotion there, but I wanted to speak with it with positivity. And I didn't want to break up during it. So I knew if I could hold through the week and I could choke that emotion down, I could get through that speech. but it's almost as if it never dawned on me until just talking to Will right now, that someone could go through all those emotions and come right out of it and say what they need to say in the moment. And I will say it's a very true thing that just recently I started to appreciate that value for showing emotion, showing that something makes you sad, shows it to other people, and they appreciate how much you care. And it took me a while to see that. To me, I only saw it as a sign of weakness when I was younger, because that's what made me feel when I was weak. It just reminded me of the times when I was younger as a kid and feeling weak, feeling sad, feeling small. And that's not really what it's about. And I still do believe that there is a value in having a leader that can control their emotions. But if I saw a leader that showed that they were crying and showed emotion for sadness, something that should be sad, but then also when they needed to pivot in the moment and to be able to take more strength within that very next instant, I would say that's a leader that I want to trust. So I think there's some work for me to really endeavor when it comes to being willing to allow the tears to fall, because I really don't want them coming out. I still have been fighting it for years. And to be able to then grab my emotions and say, okay, I felt it. And now I can feel a different emotion and still feel like I'm behind the wheel. I heard a really good sentiment from a book. This was from Mark Mason, and his more renowned book is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. But his one after, his follow-up book, which was far more insightful, I've talked about it, I'm pretty sure, on the show before, in case you hadn't heard it. It's called We Are All Fucked. So he loves the really forward titles. But it's way more of a philosophical book than you'd think. The first one was a little bit more mainstream-esque, but in the second book, I found it a lot more psychological and philosophical. And his great insight was actually around feeling emotions. And he had made a great case in point, is that emotions wouldn't be in us if they didn't do something for us. It's an evolutionary trait. Reptiles don't have them. Like that, the mammalian, I can't even say the word. The mammal brain, sorry about that. The mammal brain can actually just showcase more emotions. That's what makes us feel empathy and feel anger and feel happy and feel sad. And so when you're really, sad about something, it's a trait that's there for a reason. Even being angry, people say that might be it's not a useless emotion. And he makes a great case. It's like, it was the anger that drove society to do something about Hitler. And so when you have someone do something against a loved one, when I feel anger, because this has happened before, someone went to attack one of my friends in the bar. I actually, not only was I drinking, but I kind of blacked out from anger. I immediately grabbed that person and protected my friend. And if I didn't feel that emotion, if I didn't feel anger from someone trying to attack my friend, maybe I wouldn't have acted so quickly. And he was about to get sucker punched in the back of the head. He didn't even see any of it. And so there's a use for emotions, but emotions can drive us too hard, as we've made the case in point when it comes to emotions and food. And to be fair, the emotions aren't even driving you to food. It's that you're feeling an emotion and you're trying to cover it up by eating food. That's what emotional eating really comes down to. It's like, I feel sad. I don't want to feel sad. So I'm now going to eat some cake, and I'm going to eat more cake, because then I'm feeling, the happiness that this cake has for me. Now, here's a problem. You didn't actually process that emotion of sadness, of whatever it was. And so if you don't process that, you don't let your body sit and digest that emotion in the head, in the heart, then you're going to be in the same situation after. And you may or may not have heard me say it before, and it's not my quote. I got it from someone on social media. I believe her Instagram handle is the dietitian. And she says, if food is not the problem, then food cannot be the solution. And so just remind yourself, if you're having this issue around food, just remind yourself that it's probably not the solution. And so it might motivate you to try to figure out if you can actually just process that emotion. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel frustrated. And if you sit and your body just sits in it, just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's inherently bad. And you might find once you sit in it long enough that all of a sudden you don't feel it as much the next day. So be open to that. And I'll tell you, I'm going to be open to me feeling more sadness in an open way, in a very healthy human way. And to dive back into the whole idea of willpower itself, I loved his 2 words that he really thought about. And you could see in the moment the way that he really came to it. I wanted to give him the space. I should have messaged him before, give him some time to think about it, but it was more pure in that moment. And I thought it was great. For sure, discipline. No one's going to disagree. That's what really comes to mind for most of us when it comes to willpower. It's just discipline. Show up and do the thing you know you should do. It's the should do. It's just follow the should do. I should do this. And the way he said it was very eloquent, is just saying what you said you were going to do, owning your word, be a person of your word. And as I mentioned, that's how you're going to find confidence. And I also will come back to a Jason Brooks quote, is you're putting in a vote for the person that you want to become. The time that you're reaching for the carrots instead of the potato chips, the time that you go for the workout instead of sleeping in, that's a vote. It's like, hey, I really do want to be this person. And the more you do that, the more disciplined you are, the more you just end up becoming that person. And how he had mentioned the wisdom part, I thought was very, very unique, but also intelligent. I think that's in some sense the power aspect of it, as I mentioned, is the will to push you into it, but the power of knowing how effective it is over a long period of time. I think there is wisdom within using the term wisdom, because only people who have utilized willpower effectively over the course of their life to challenge themselves to do uncomfortable things are the people who actually will continue to use willpower. But the people who have inadequately followed through with their will, inadequately followed through with what they said they would do, are the people who don't have as much belief in the system, and they have less power. They have less confidence in themselves. And so if you want to have confidence in yourself, you want to believe that you can do it, it literally will take willpower to repeat and repeat and repeat. And we talked about this on the last podcast, how long is. Not just, 3 months. That's going to be a drop in the bucket for how long some of these habits need to take. And so to have patience and to be wise enough to know it will work. And the hard part is that you don't know at the start. And this is something I really think is valuable for people who struggle with their own willpower, is that you don't know that it's going to work. And so you have less faith in the system. You don't believe in the power of it, essentially. So you're going to will yourself to do things only until that willpower, the will, kind of drains and gets exhausted. It was a really interesting finding that my friend, Ray Lavoie, he's been on the podcast a couple of times, talked about when it came to the research around willpower acting as a muscle. So in the mind, as far as, your ability to be pushing beyond tasks, when you challenge people with different tasks, depending on what task they've done, the more will it took to do something, whether it's to abstain from a food, whether it's to challenge yourself to do something physical or mental. Willpower works like a muscle, and it could be exhausted. And so the important thing there is to appreciate that it's really tough at the start, but you build up the capacity of what your willpower can handle. And so the more you practice your willpower, the more time you give your willpower, the better it'll grow. However, just think about that analogy for what you're going to demand on the system. And if you're demanding a high level of will on yourself, let's say, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to start exercising 5 days a week. I'm going to eat clean every day. The word clean's terrible. And so you're just trying to go so far to the extreme, max your willpower out, right? And it's like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and do max bench press. I'm going to go do an ultra marathon. Very first time I go for a run. That ain't going to do very well. So your willpower is going to be exhausted. What standard of life change or habit change do you think that your willpower will be tested enough to notice but you could for sure sustain it for more than a month. And you would feel like it would almost feel easy, but it does feel hard. That's the question. So think about like showing up for the gym for the first time. What would be like, I need to feel like it was a workout so it feels useful, but I don't want to be terrified of any of the weights. That's the way you should take the kind of ideas around what kind of will you'd want to put onto yourself. And so consider that you build that up. So, okay, I'm guaranteeing I'm going to for sure do 2 workouts a week, or I'm for sure going to have enough protein every day. Whatever is that lower barrier to entry, and build it up and build up the habit. And when it comes to the willpower to resist things, maybe absolution isn't the solution. Maybe it's like, I got to be 100% clean for 30 days. Maybe that's not the solution. Well, I'm going to for sure try not to have any treats, maybe Monday to Friday, and have a very specific plan for how many treats I can have on the weekend. And those make a big difference, because if you have a very specific plan for alleviation of the will, it's like a really good simple idea is like, hey, I'm going to have 2 dinners and I don't track with my family on Saturday and Sunday. I'm not going to track. I'm just going to have those dinners. I'm going to enjoy whatever we choose to have. And the rest of the time, I'm going to try to show some more will. Maybe that's even like 3 or 4 dinners out of the week to start. It has to be what is your standardization that's going to make you feel uncomfortable, but for sure successful, like a 90% chance of success. And then you build that up over time. And I think it's super important that people look at the stages of progression, not relative to someone else they know, relative to themselves, relative to what they know they can do. And the great thing is with willpower is at the start, it sucks a lot, but it's like going to the gym at the start, super uncomfortable. Months, years later, it becomes normal. It doesn't take will to do the thing. It doesn't take will to eat healthy for myself anymore. I'm excited to go eat a salad after I had a weekend of eating out. I'm excited to go just eat my normal diet routinely. And so the will doesn't actually always need to be there for every single habit once you've established the value of the habits and you become intrinsically motivated to continue all of these things. But also remember along the way, and this was terrific advice, once again, that Will gave here, you're going to plan to fail. What is your plan to fail? Like, what is the problem? It's like, okay, I said I'm going to have, 4 days of clean eating. I hate that word clean. Let's say 4 days of well-planned, high value, good quality food, planned nutrition. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm just going to have 1 treat a day. And let's say Saturday rolls around and you've had 2 or 3. You actually just didn't even follow the plan. Does that mean Sunday we just shouldn't try? And so the main plan I'm going to recommend, and you always got to find it for yourself, but I'm just going to say the simplest adage is 1 meal. It's 1 good, totally fine meal. It's not a fast the next day. It's not, just completely absolving it. It's also not saying fuck it and slashing all the tires, or as I like to say, driving down the wrong fucking road that's popping your tires. It's steering it. And even then, let's use the analogy of the car driving, because clearly you've driven off of the path a little bit that forced you to pop your tire. But just a hard left turn isn't a great solution either. Slowly drive back onto a cleaner path, then replace that tire. And it's super important that you realize that it's going to happen. Like, you're going to fail. You're going to, and I don't even like the word failure. You're going to make errors. You're going to have fuck ups. You're going to have slip ups. And so 1 meal, 1 good day, 1 good workout, and then everything has changed. No matter how bad you feel, no matter how bad the meal was on Sunday night, Monday morning, have a protein shake. Just make it feel as normal as possible so we don't get into the binge yo-yo cycle, as you've probably heard me talk about before. And I'd be really curious to hear how Will does on his marathon. I think a lesson for you to appreciate is set out on a goal, say you're going to do it in some way, put some stakes into it. This is a really big thing when we do challenges within my program. We do transformation challenges, twice a year. And I say, okay, I need at least some stake in the game. I mean, they're paying me, but to be in the challenge, you got to put a little bit more stake in the game. You got to physically give some money down. And that money just goes to either a charity or it goes to the person who wins. But it helps them feel motivated to be like, yeah, I'm committed to this. I'm going to try to do this. And so just make sure that you always feel value in why you're setting out to do what you're doing. Let's say you're not getting help from a coach, which is probably the most important thing. Not the most important. The two most important things that a coach can provide you is filtering to make sure that you get the right information. You're not wasting your time. You can get from point A to point B sooner. There is a lot of information out there. Luckily, things like ChatGPT honestly exist, and they can probably give you pretty good advice. But there is a lot of coaches. There's a lot of information out there. The most important thing after the information and filtering that relative to you is going to be accountability. Is that someone cares whether or not you show up. Like ChatGPT doesn't give a fuck if you do the workouts or don't. It can pretend to, but it doesn't. And so knowing someone cares is a huge thing. So if you're going to do this on your own, make sure you have someone that cares whether or not you show up. Whether that's wagering a friend is what Will did with his friend, or you do it with a partner. And say, hey, I'm going to message you every time I do my workouts. I'm going to message you every time I have a good day of eating. Like doing things not alone is huge. And we're currently doing a habit challenge right now in the group. And it's been a huge difference for people. I see people who are way more lagging behind on their own. They're on top of it. They're on top of their stuff. They're hey, I don't want to let the people behind. I don't want to let these people down. And that's huge. So have that element of community and support in some way will make that difference to give you more willpower and keeping to what you're trying to do. And just a side adage, if you're ever trying to go after it, and I talked to Will after, and I hopefully convinced him to go get a strength coach. No matter what sport you do, you need strength. So even if it's just injury prevention, and especially when you do long distance running, you got to get nutrition guidance, because it's a lot of calories and you're going to perform a lot better. I mean, I've hit a bonk before when I did my full marathon training. First time I tried to go for 17 miles, which isn't even 20 miles, but it was like my longest run to that date. And I was still kind of trying to get leaner during the prep for this. And I did not have enough calories going into it. I even had hydration. I even had Gatorade bottles on it. And the last mile was like, I didn't even need to do it. I just kind of went for it. And halfway through it, I'm like, oh my God, am I going to need to call because I was running around by the farm. I was like, am I going to call my mom to pick me up? And I walked like a half mile. I got my 17 done. And then I just walked a half mile home. And I was like, oh, I'm dizzy. And that was poor nutrition. That was not enough carbs in the system. So I could have bonked. And what happens to marathon runners is that they will run and then the lights literally go out. Like people will faint if they don't have sufficient carbs. You may or may not have seen the videos of when inappropriate electrolytes, not enough electrolytes, these guys are almost at the finish line and their body's shutting down. They're trying to will themselves through, but their body is shutting down because they don't have enough salt. They don't have enough water and salt to actually electrolytes to communicate with the muscles. So their body is not letting them. So nutrition is going to be key. It's always going to be things that we need in any sport discipline. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it gave you a lot of information around the idea of willpower. And I think it did. I think it did in unique ways. I think it gives you an idea that we can appreciate emotions. It can give you some good insight and you can utilize those emotions well. Appreciate that willpower is about discipline, but also the wisdom to be able to show up for yourself. And remember to plan to fail. And don't hesitate to go check out Will's stuff. Check out that Willpower app if you want to see what these habits are doing for you and actually recognize what kind of benefit you're getting from it so that it reinforces the habit long term. Thanks so much, Will. Thank you as a listener. As always, I always appreciate you. Please, leave a review, share it with someone you know, because that's the only way this little podcast grows. But regardless, thank you. I always appreciate you spending time listening to us rant about all the nutrition, training, and ambition ideas so I can help you grow your own ambition. Because we know life is not about the pursuit of happiness, but rather the happiness within pursuit. And I'll catch you next time.